The Valoran research vessel floated like a broken crystal in the empty darkness of space. Its once beautiful hull showed deep cracks from meteor impacts, and lights flickered weakly through damaged sections. Inside the command center, Commander Zix pressed his four-fingered hand against the control panel, his pale blue skin growing darker with worry. Life support failing in sections 7 through 12, his science officer reported. The voice came through heavy with exhaustion. They had been drifting for 15 cycles now, sending distress signals that no one answered. Zix looked around at his dying crew. 23 Velerans remained from the original 50. Their large black eyes had lost their shine, and their delicate frames shook from the cold seeping through the ship's broken barriers. The Valorans weren't built for hardship. They came from a world of eternal spring, where the worst danger was a strong breeze. "Commander," the communications officer whispered. "No response to our signals. The galaxy has forgotten us." Zix nodded slowly. He knew the truth. Other species avoided this sector of space. Too dangerous, too far from trade routes. His people had come here for scientific research, never expecting disaster. Now they would die here alone among the stars. Then something impossible happened. "Commander, unknown vessel approaching." The sensor operator's voice cracked with surprise. "It's primitive metal construction chemical propulsion, but it's coming straight for us." On the main screen, a bulky human ship emerged from hyperspace. The USS Horizon looked like a flying brick compared to the elegant Veleran vessel. Its gray hull bore scorch marks and patches from countless repairs. To the refined aliens, it seemed barely space-worthy. Inside the Horizon's bridge, Captain John Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His weathered face showed concern as he studied the alien ship on his screen. "Life signs?" he asked. 23, Captain," replied Lisa Morgan, the ship's xenobiologist. Her fingers danced across her console. "They're alive but weak. Their life support is failing fast." Carter didn't hesitate. "Prepare rescue operations. Mike, get your engineering team ready." "Sir," his first officer warned, "we don't know anything about this species. They could be hostile." Carter turned to face him. "They're dying, Paul. That's all I need to know." The Valorans watched in disbelief as the human ship moved closer. No species had ever approached an unknown vessel to offer help. It simply wasn't done. The risk was too great, the protocols too strict. Dr. Lisa Morgan established first contact using mathematical sequences, the universal language. When the Valorans responded, she felt her heart race with excitement. Actual aliens, and they needed help. "Captain, I've established basic communication. They call themselves Velerans. Their ship hit a meteor field. They've been drifting for 15 of their cycles, about 20 Earth days. Can we dock with them?" Kate Murphy, the pilot, studied her instruments. "Their docking ports don't match ours, but I think I can make it work. It'll be rough." "Do it." The next hour tested everyone's nerves. Kate performed maneuvers that made even seasoned crew members grip their seats. She matched rotation with the tumbling alien ship, adjusted for its erratic movement, and somehow managed to connect the two vessels with manual controls and pure instinct. "Docking complete," she announced, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Though, I wouldn't call it pretty." Commander Zix watched the humans enter his ship with a mixture of fear and wonder. They moved with strange confidence, their bodies obviously built for harsh conditions. Their skin showed scars, their hands were rough, and they carried equipment that looked crude but functional. "I'm Dr. Lisa Morgan," the female human said through her translator device. "We're here to help." Zix stared at her. You came to help? But you don't know us. We could be dangerous." Lisa smiled. "You sent a distress signal. Where we come from, that means someone needs help." The human engineer, Mike Torres, examined the Valoran systems with professional interest. The technology was far beyond Earth's, but broken was broken. He pulled out a roll of gray tape and started working. "What is that?" Zix asked, pointing at the tape. "Duct tape," Mike grinned. "Human miracle worker. Trust me." The Valorans watched in amazement as Mike fixed critical systems using methods that seemed impossibly simple. He rerouted power through backup channels, sealed air leaks with tape and adhesive foam, and somehow made failing life support systems work again. Your technology is beautiful, Mike told them, but it's got no redundancy. One thing breaks, whole system fails. Humans learned long ago, always have a backup for your backup. As the crews worked together, Lisa shared information about Earth with the increasingly curious Valorans. When she described human homeworld conditions, their large eyes grew even wider. Your gravity is 3 times standard, Zix said slowly. Your star produces lethal radiation. You have predators that hunt in packs, weather that can destroy cities, and diseases that constantly evolve to kill you. This is a death world. We just call it home, Lisa shrugged. But how do you survive? By helping each other, Captain Carter answered, entering the conversation. When everything tries to kill you, you learn that cooperation is the only way to live. Over the next 6 hours, the humans shared their food, medical supplies, and expertise. They worked without rest, fixing systems and teaching the Valorans emergency repair techniques. When Valoran crew members grew too tired to continue, humans carried them to safe areas and tended to their needs. Finally, as the Valoran ship hummed with restored power and life support functioned normally, Commander Zix approached Captain Carter. Why? He asked simply. Why risk your ship and crew for strangers? Carter thought for a moment. On Earth we have a saying, today you, tomorrow me. We help because someday we might be the ones needing it. Besides, he smiled, it's what humans do. We're stubborn that way. As the 2 ships prepared to part ways, Zix made a decision that would change galactic history. He opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council and reported something unprecedented. A species from a death world had saved them, asking nothing in return. The humans, he transmitted, possess something we have lost. When all seems doomed, they bring hope. The message spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The Deathworlders, the humans from the impossible planet, had entered the galactic stage, and they had come not as conquerors but as helpers. In the depths of space, 2 ships flew side by side toward the nearest space station, one elegant and crystalline, the other blocky and scarred. Together they represented a new chapter in galactic civilization. The age of human involvement had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since the Valoran rescue. The Galactic Council's Great Hall buzzed with panic as delegates from 57 species gathered for an emergency session. The crystal dome above them showed the stars, but no one looked up. Every eye focused on the horrifying reports displayed on the central screen. Ambassador Susan Davis sat in the human delegation section, her brown eyes scanning the data. She was still new to this role. Humanity had only received provisional membership after the Valoran incident. Around her, alien delegates whispered in their native languages, their universal translators creating a strange chorus of fear. Order. We require order. The council chairman, a tall Altarian with silver skin, struck his ceremonial staff against the floor. The sound echoed through the massive chamber. Honored delegates, he continued, his voice heavy with dread. The plague has now reached 17 systems. 40 billion sentients are affected. Our finest medical minds have found no cure. The screen showed images that made Susan's heart sink. Aliens of all species lay motionless in medical bays, their eyes open but unseeing. The plague struck the nervous system, leaving victims trapped in permanent comas. They lived but could not wake, speak, or move. The Zephyrians have the most advanced medicine in the galaxy, a reptilian delegate hissed. If they cannot find a cure, what hope remains? The Zephyrian medical chief stood up, his feathered head drooping with shame. We have tried everything. The plague adapts to each treatment. It specifically targets neural pathways common to all advanced species. We must accept the truth. This plague may end galactic civilization as we know it. Panic erupted in the chamber. Delegates shouted about quarantine protocols, about sealing off entire sectors, about sacrificing billions to save trillions. Susan watched the chaos with growing frustration. Back on Earth, they had a saying, when everyone's shouting, no one's thinking. She stood up. The human delegation requests permission to examine the plague data. The chamber fell silent. The chairman stared at her with his compound eyes. Ambassador Davis, while we appreciate human enthusiasm, this is a medical crisis beyond your species' capabilities. You still use, what is the term, antibiotics? Some delegates actually laughed. Susan felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice calm. We'd still like to try. Let them waste their time, the Zephyrian chief said dismissively. We have real solutions to discuss. Susan sat down and immediately sent a message to Earth. Within hours, Dr. Alex Rodriguez and his team were on their way to the council station. The Latino doctor had fought diseases in Earth's toughest regions, from Amazon jungle viruses to Arctic bacteria. If anyone could find something others missed, it was Alex. When Alex arrived, he ignored the condescending looks from alien medical staff. He set up his equipment, devices that looked primitive next to the crystalline Zephyrian instruments, and began studying the plague samples. Interesting, he muttered after 12 hours of nonstop work. What's interesting? Susan asked, bringing him his 5th cup of coffee. This isn't a natural disease, Alex said, his dark eyes focused on his microscope. Look at these protein structures, they're engineered, this is a bioweapon. That's impossible, the Zephyrian chief said from behind them. He had come to check on the primitive human efforts. We would have detected artificial markers, not if it was designed by someone who thinks differently than you, Alex replied. Someone who wanted to target specific neural frequencies. Tell me, what do all affected species have in common? The Zephyrian thought. We all achieved faster than light travel. We all have advanced neural structures. Exactly. Advanced, ordered, predictable neural patterns. Very different from humans. Susan leaned forward. What do you mean? Alex pulled up a brain scan comparison. Look. Alien neural patterns are like beautiful symphonies, ordered, harmonious. Human brains, we're jazz music, chaotic, unpredictable, constantly improvising. We evolved on a world where danger came from everywhere. Our neurons fire in patterns. That would give most aliens headaches. You're saying humans are immune. Not just immune, I think we can create a cure. The next week became a blur of activity. Alex and his team worked with Dr. Lisa Morgan, who had returned from her xenobiology studies. They discovered the plague targeted specific neural receptors that humans simply didn't have. Their chaotic neural patterns, evolved from millennia of surviving Earth's dangers, made them naturally resistant. But creating a cure proved challenging. The solution required something that horrified the alien medical establishment. You want to inject them with what? The council chairman stared at Alex in disbelief. Cultured human neural tissue, modified with stress hormones, Alex explained patiently. The cure needs to introduce controlled chaos into their ordered neural patterns. It's like teaching their brains to be a little more human. You're asking us to put human biological material into our bodies? A delegate asked, his voice shaking. To save your lives? Yes. The debate raged for days. Some species considered it barbaric, unnatural. Others pointed out that humans had already proven their worth by saving the Valorans. Finally, as more systems reported plague outbreaks, desperation won. The first test subject was a young Kandorian scientist who had been in a coma for weeks. Alex personally administered the treatment, watching nervously as the modified human neural cultures entered the patient's system. For 6 hours, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the patient's fingers twitched. His eyes focused. He spoke a single word in his native language. Water. The medical bay erupted in cheers. The cure worked. What followed was the largest medical operation in galactic history. Humans, volunteers lined up to donate neural tissue samples, enduring painful extraction procedures without complaint. Earth's laboratories worked around the clock, producing millions of doses. Why do you do this? The Zephyrian chief asked Alex one day, watching humans undergo the donation process. It causes you pain, yet you volunteer freely. Alex smiled tiredly. Where we come from, we have blood banks, organ donors, bone marrow registries. Humans have always shared pieces of ourselves to save others. It's what makes us human. The plague was stopped in 3 months. Billions of lives were saved. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to grant Earth full membership, with a special designation, Medical Emergency Response Coordinators. At the ceremony, the council chairman spoke words that echoed through the galaxy. We thought humans were primitive because they come from a death world. We were wrong. Their chaotic biology, which we mocked, saved us all. They taught us that sometimes survival doesn't come from order and advancement. Sometimes it comes from chaos, adaptation, and the willingness to share your very essence with strangers. Susan Davis accepted the honor on behalf of Earth. As she looked at the assembly of aliens, many now carrying traces of human neural patterns, she thought about how far humanity had come. From a dangerous death world to the galaxy's healers. It was a journey no one had expected. But then again, humans had always been full of surprises. The mining world of Kepler-7 had been silent for 2 weeks. No communications, no ships leaving the planet, no signs of life from the 3 colonies that housed 50,000 workers. The Galactic Council grew worried. Mining operations were vital. Kepler-7 produced rare crystals needed for faster-than-light engines. Captain Sam Jackson stood in the briefing room of the USS Vanguard, studying holographic images of the empty colonies. His dark skin reflected the blue light from the displays. Around him, his team of Marines prepared their gear. The Thrakari sent 3 squads, Admiral Chen explained through the communication screen. Best soldiers in the galaxy. They lasted 6 hours before their final transmission cut off. What did they report? Sam asked. Shadows. Moving shadows that ate the darkness itself. Sergeant Maria Gonzalez looked up from checking her rifle. Shadows don't eat people, Admiral. These do. The Thrakari refuse to send more troops. They say the darkness itself has become predatory. Sam nodded slowly. When do we leave? Captain. The Admiral leaned forward. The Council wants to simply quarantine the planet. Write off the losses. I'm giving you a choice here. No, sir. Sam's voice was firm. Humans don't abandon people. If something's hunting them in the dark, we'll hunt it right back. 4 hours later, the human transport descended through Kepler-7's thick atmosphere. The planet was mostly underground tunnels and caverns, perfect for mining, terrible for fighting. As they approached the main colony, the Marines saw empty streets, abandoned vehicles, and doors left wide open. No bodies, Private Bill Jones observed. He was the youngest on the team, barely 20, but he'd grown up in Alaska's wilderness. Dark forests and long nights were nothing new to him. Movement patterns are strange, Maria noted, studying the ground. See these marks? People running, then nothing, like they just vanished. They entered the colony's command center. Emergency lights cast eerie red glows. The place had been evacuated in panic. Coffee cups still sat on desks, personal items scattered on the floor. Sam found the last log entry. Day 12. They're in the shadows now. Can't see them. Can't fight them. They take people when the lights dim. We're running out of power. God help us. Captain, Bill called from the security station. Got something on the deep sensors. Movement in the lower mines. Lots of it. Sam made his decision. We go down. Jones, you spent months alone in Alaska. Take point on tracking. The descent into the mines tested everyone's nerves. Their helmet lights pierced the darkness, but shadows seemed to move just beyond the beams. The temperature dropped. Their breath misted in the air. Sir, Maria whispered, I've fought terrorists, aliens, even those acid-spitting creatures on Vega Prime. But this is different. The darkness feels alive. They reached level 30, where the mining tunnels opened into natural caverns. Here, their lights seemed weaker, as if the darkness actively fought against them. Then they found the first trace of the colonists, personal items arranged in strange patterns on the ground. Bill knelt beside the items. They're not random. Look, it's like offerings. My grandfather told stories of leaving gifts for forest, spirits. These people were scientists and miners, Maria said. They wouldn't. Her words died as the shadows around them shifted. Not normal shadow movement. These shadows had depth, substance. They flowed like liquid darkness surrounding the Marines. Weapons hot, Sam ordered. But when they fired, Their energy beams passed through the shadows without effect. Then the whispers started. Voices in the darkness speaking fears that each Marine tried to hide. The shadows pressed closer, feeding on their growing terror. "Fall back!" Sam shouted, but the shadows moved faster. Private Chen screamed as darkness enveloped him, then vanished. The entity had taken him. That's when Bill did something unexpected. Instead of running, he turned off his helmet light. "Jones, what are you doing?" Maria grabbed for him. "Trust me," Bill said calmly. He closed his eyes, controlling his breathing. "In Alaska, I learned something. Darkness isn't the enemy. Fear of darkness is." He stood perfectly still as shadows swirled around him. But instead of taking him, they paused. Bill opened his eyes, now adjusted to the darkness, and saw them clearly for the first time. The shadows weren't creatures of pure darkness. They were interdimensional beings that existed between light and dark. They fed on fear, growing stronger as their prey's terror increased. The colonists and Thrakari soldiers had been paralyzed by fear, making them perfect victims. "Everyone, lights off," Bill said firmly. "Don't fight the darkness. Accept it." "Are you insane?" a Marine shouted. But Sam understood. "Do it. That's an order." One by one, the Marines turned off their lights. The cavern plunged into absolute darkness. At first, panic threatened to overwhelm them. Then, following Bill's lead, they controlled their breathing, slowed their heart rates, and let their eyes adjust. Something amazing happened. As their fear decreased, the shadows became visible, like heat mirages in the darkness. More importantly, the shadows seemed confused. Their prey wasn't acting like prey anymore. "They're dimensional predators," Bill explained quietly. "They hunt through fear because fear creates openings between dimensions. No fear, no openings." Maria laughed suddenly. "You know what? I've faced scarier things than weird shadow creatures. My mother-in-law visits next week." The other Marines chuckled. As their fear transformed into determination, the shadows began to retreat. They couldn't feed on courage. Sam pulled out old chemical flares, primitive technology the aliens had, mocked. The harsh chemical light disrupted the shadows' dimensional stability, forcing them fully into normal space where they appeared as writhing, smoke-like beings. "Now we can fight them," Sam grinned. The battle was strange but effective. The Marines used combinations of chemical lights, controlled darkness, and most importantly, managed fear. They pushed the shadows back, deeper into the caverns, until the creatures fled into whatever dimension they came from. They found the colonists and missing soldiers in deep chambers, unconscious but alive. The shadows had been feeding on their fear slowly, keeping them trapped in nightmares. As rescue ships arrived, the Galactic Council asked how humans had succeeded where others failed. "Simple," Sam reported. "Everyone else tried to eliminate the darkness. We learned to make friends with it. On Earth, darkness was our first companion. We learned to use it, not fear it." Bill Jones received the Galactic Medal of Valor, the youngest human ever honored, but he just shrugged. "Where I come from, we have 6 months of darkness every year. You learn that monsters aren't in the dark. They're in your mind." The Council established new protocols when facing the unknown darkness called the humans. They were, after all, the only species that had evolved alongside the night itself. From that day forward, human teams patrolled the dark edges of civilized space, teaching aliens an ancient Earth truth. The darkness isn't your enemy if you know how to dance with it. The paradise world of Luminous had been home to 12 billion souls for over 10,000 years. Its 3 moons danced in perfect harmony, its vast oceans sparkled under a gentle sun, and its floating cities were considered the greatest architectural achievements in the galaxy. The Luminary people lived in peace, creating art and philosophy that influenced countless civilizations. Now their star was dying 50 million years too early. Captain Frank Williams studied the data on his screen aboard the cargo hauler Persistent. Hope. The numbers didn't lie. Luminous's star was collapsing at an impossible rate. Scientists predicted total stellar failure in 8 months. The greatest evacuation in galactic history was underway, but it was failing. "The consortium's ships can't handle the radiation," reported Amy Peterson, the ship's chief engineer. Her red hair was tied back as she worked over multiple displays. "Their pretty crystal ships just melt when they get close. Already lost 40 vessels trying to reach the inner planets." Frank nodded grimly. The Galactic Consortium had the fastest, most elegant ships in known space. But elegant didn't mean tough. Human ships were different. Ugly blocks of metal built to survive Earth's brutal launch conditions and solar radiation. The distress call came directly from the Luminary High Chancellor. Frank had never heard such desperation in an alien voice. "Captain Williams, we beg for human assistance. 6 billion of our people remain on the outer colonies. The radiation increases daily. Our ships, they're failing. Children are trapped on moon bases. We have nowhere else to turn." Frank looked at his crew. 20 humans on an old cargo hauler. By galactic standards, they were nobody special. But by human standards, they were exactly who you wanted in a crisis. "Tell them we're coming," Frank said, "and tell Earth to send everything that can fly." What followed was the most unlikely rescue fleet in history. Human ships arrived from across the galaxy. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, old colony ships, even decommissioned military transports. Ships that other species had mocked as primitive and ugly. Ships held together with welded patches and prayer. The aliens watched in confusion as these battered vessels approached the dying star. Where their sophisticated ships failed, human vessels pushed through. Their thick metal hulls, originally designed to handle Earth's Van Allen radiation belts, shrugged off stellar radiation that crippled more advanced ships. "I don't understand," the Altarian fleet commander said, watching human ships dive into radiation storms. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. How are they surviving?" Amy Peterson could have explained. Human ships were built with triple redundancy because Earth launches were so dangerous. Manual backups existed for every system because early space travel had taught hard lessons. Thick shielding protected against radiation because humans had learned from nuclear accidents. Their primitive designs were actually survival engineering at its finest. Pilot Steve Miller led the first convoy to the inner moon of Radiance, where 2 million children were trapped in educational facilities. The radiation was so intense that his ship's paint burned off, leaving bare metal. But the engines kept running, the life support held, and the hull stayed intact. "This is insane," his co-pilot muttered as they approached the landing platform. "We're flying through a stellar storm in a ship older than my grandmother," Steve grinned. "My grandmother survived the Texas drought of 2085. She was tougher than any storm, so is this ship. They loaded children by the thousands." The Luminari. Teachers wept as humans worked with calm efficiency, fitting twice as many evacuees as the specs suggested. Humans had learned to push limits because their world had always demanded it. Back on the command ship, Frank coordinated the impossible. Human crews worked 20-hour shifts, sustained by coffee and determination. When sophisticated navigation systems failed, they flew by instinct and experience. When automated systems crashed, they switched to manual control. "Captain," Amy reported after 2 months of nonstop evacuations, "the Henderson's Hope just lost main power. They're drifting with 8,000 evacuees aboard. Who's closest?" "The Star Mule, but they're already overloaded." Frank didn't hesitate. "Tell Captain Rodriguez to dump his cargo and take the evacuees. We'll tow the Henderson's Hope." "Sir, towing in this radiation. We don't leave people behind, Amy. Ever." The rescue continued month after month. Human. Ships modified alien vessels with dirty technology. Lead-lined shields, mechanical controls, analog instruments. Things the galaxy had abandoned as primitive but which worked when everything else failed. "You're using chemical rockets as backup thrusters?" a Zephyrian engineer asked in disbelief as Amy welded another patch. "Chemical rockets don't care about radiation," Amy explained. "They're simple, reliable, and they work. Sometimes that's all you need." The evacuation's final phase was the hardest. The star's collapse accelerated, and reaching the innermost facilities seemed impossible. Even human ships were struggling. That's when the Luminari Chancellor made a desperate request. There are still 50,000 in the core research station. Our greatest scientists, our cultural archives. We cannot reach them. Frank looked at the radiation readings. They were off the scale. No ship had ever survived such conditions. But humans had one advantage. They were stubborn enough to try the impossible. All ships, Frank broadcast. We're going for the core station. I need volunteers for shield formation. Every human ship responded. They arranged themselves in a spearhead formation, sharing shield power and creating a protected corridor. Ships on the outside took tremendous damage, their hulls glowing red-hot, but they held position. Steve Miller piloted the lead ship into the stellar chaos. His instruments failed one by one. Navigation went dark. Communications cut out. But he kept flying, using visual references and pilot instinct, while other ships maintained the shield corridor behind him. They reached the station with minutes to spare. As the last evacuees boarded and they turned for open space, the star's collapse reached critical phase. The human fleet ran at maximum power, their primitive engines somehow outrunning the stellar shockwave. They made it. Barely. Several ships would never fly again, their structures warped by heat and radiation. But every soul was saved. 12 billion luminary evacuated. Not one life lost in the evacuation itself. The galaxy watched in awe as the final count came in. The greatest evacuation in history, accomplished by the primitive humans with their outdated ships. At the ceremony on the new Luminari homeworld, the High Chancellor spoke to assembled dignitaries. We had the most advanced ships, the finest technology. But we forgot something essential. That survival requires more than sophistication. It requires toughness, adaptability, and the will to keep flying when everything says you should stop. The humans never forgot this. They saved us not despite their primitive technology, but because of it. Frank Williams accepted the Galactic Medal of Honor on behalf of all human crews. But his speech was simple. Where we come from, you use what works. Fancy doesn't matter if it breaks. Our ships aren't pretty, but they fly. And when people need saving, that's all that counts. From that day forward, human primitive technology was studied across the galaxy, because sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and sometimes stubbornness was the highest form of engineering. Ambassador Richard Chen stood in the Grand Council chamber, facing representatives from every major galactic civilization. The formal request before him was unprecedented in the million-year history of the Galactic Council. They wanted to establish an embassy on Earth itself. You understand what you're asking? Richard said calmly. Earth isn't like your worlds. We have earthquakes, hurricanes, predators that hunt for sport, and weather that changes by the hour. The council chairman, his crystalline form shimmering with nervous energy, replied, We have studied your history, Ambassador Chen. Humans have saved the Valorans, cured the neural plague, defeated the shadow predators, and evacuated Luminous. We must understand how a species from such a hostile world became the galaxy's greatest helpers. Richard exchanged glances with his aide, Jennifer Woods. She shrugged slightly, a human gesture that meant, why not? He turned back to the council. Very well. But don't say we didn't warn you. 3 months later, the first alien embassy ship descended through Earth's atmosphere toward Los Angeles. The delegation included 12 species, led by Ambassador Zix, the same Valoran commander humans had rescued years ago. As their ship approached the landing pad, they watched the sprawling city with wonder and fear. Those structures, a Thrakari warrior pointed at the skyscrapers. They stand despite your seismic activity? We build them to sway, explained Mayor Janet Kim, who had come to greet them. Rigid things break, flexible things survive. It's kind of our planet's motto. The aliens' first surprise came immediately. Children played in nearby parks, completely unsupervised. People jogged past with tiny music devices, ignoring potential dangers. Dogs, descendants of predators, walked peacefully with their human companions. Your offspring, Zix said carefully. They play without protection, but your historical records show countless dangerous creatures. Janet laughed. Oh, we still have dangers, but we teach kids to be careful, not fearful. Big difference. Thaidi. Welcome ceremony was held outdoors in Griffith Park. The aliens nervously watched the sky, remembering reports of Earth's unpredictable weather. Halfway through the presentations, their fears materialized. The ground began to shake. Earthquake, someone called out cheerfully. The aliens panicked. Several tried to run, others cowered. But the humans? They calmly moved away from trees and light poles, some even continuing their conversations. Parents picked up small children with practiced ease. Office workers in nearby buildings simply ducked under desks. Nobody's screaming, the Altarian delegate observed in shock. It's just a 4.5, Janet said, checking her phone. We don't get excited unless it's over 6.0. 20 seconds later, the shaking stopped. Humans immediately returned to what they were doing. A food vendor called out, "Earthquake special, half-price hot dogs for the next 10 minutes. The Zephyrian scientist was recording everything. Incredible. You experienced tectonic violence that would evacuate entire cities on our worlds, yet you treat it as minor inconvenience? Firefighter Dave Brown, part of the security detail, grinned. Minor inconvenience? Nah, it's Tuesday. As days passed, the aliens documented one impossibility after another. They watched a hurricane warning prompt efficient preparations rather than panic. They observed people swimming in oceans containing actual sharks. They stood amazed as children petted horses, massive animals that could kill with a single kick. Your young one, Zik said to a mother whose daughter was feeding ducks. She approaches avian descendants of dinosaurs without fear. The mother looked confused. They're just ducks. Though you should see her with our cat. Now that's a real predator. Killed 3 mice last week. The breaking point came during a routine wildfire in the nearby hills. The aliens watched news, coverage and terror as flames consumed acres of land. They prepared to evacuate the entire state. Then they saw the human response. Firefighters charged toward the flames. Pilots flew directly into smoke clouds. Citizens calmly implemented evacuation plans they'd practiced for years. Some people were actually barbecuing in their backyards while ash fell from the sky. This is madness, the Kandorian delegate whispered. Your world attacks you with fire from the sky and humans. Cook food outdoors? Dave Brown was adjusting his firefighting gear. Fire's just another problem to solve. We've been dealing with it since we discovered it. Besides, he pointed to the news showing firefighters saving a dog. Look at that good boy. Can't let fire win when there are dogs to save. The defining moment came during an official dinner. A small earthquake rattled the windows. A coyote howled in the distance. The power flickered from a storm, and someone's smartphone buzzed with a flash flood warning. Secretary General Robert White raised his glass. To our guests, he said calmly, as another tremor shook the building. Welcome to Earth. How? Ambassador Zix finally asked. How do you live like this? Your world tries to kill you every day. Robert smiled. That's exactly why we survive. Earth taught us that danger is constant, so we learn to adapt constantly. We don't fight our world. We dance with it. When earthquakes come, we sway. When fires burn, we build fire breaks. When predators hunt, we become better hunters. But the fear, a luminary artist said softly. Fear keeps you alive, Jennifer Woods explained. But courage keeps you living. There's a difference. We feel fear. We just don't let it stop us. The alien delegation stayed for 6 months. They experienced wildfires, earthquakes, storms, and even a minor volcanic eruption. They watched humans respond to each crisis with a mixture of preparation, cooperation, and astounding casualness. They saw children learn to swim in oceans, climb trees, and handle both danger and safety with equal confidence. When they returned to the Galactic Council, their report changed everything. The humans haven't conquered their death world, Ambassador Zix announced. They've formed a partnership with it. Every danger taught them a lesson. Every disaster made them stronger. They survive not by eliminating threats, but by accepting them as part of life. The Council voted unanimously. Earth was designated the official Galactic Crisis Response Coordinator. When disaster struck anywhere in the galaxy, humans would lead the response. In his closing speech, Zix shared the fundamental truth about humanity. We thought Deathworlders would be warriors, conquerors, or barbarians. Instead, we found teachers, helpers, and friends. Humans don't just survive the impossible. They teach others to survive it too. When the galaxy faces doom, Earth offers hope, not because they've eliminated danger, but because they've learned to dance with it. As mixed human-alien crews departed for trouble spots across the galaxy, they carried humanity's greatest lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous worlds create the most compassionate people. And sometimes, hope comes from those who face doom every day and choose to smile anyway. The age of human galactic leadership had truly begun. And somewhere on Earth, a child climbed a tree while her parents watched calmly, preparing the next generation to help a galaxy that had finally understood. Deathworlders make the best lifesavers.